Hey Blessed family, it's your girl Bella. Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing my first wrap up of the month. I'm doing my January wrap up. And we're going to talk about all the books that I read in January. So I'm actually filming this on January 28th. So I know for a fact I'm going to finish at least one more book this month, if not two. But I'll just put those in my February wrap up because they're not going to be going in this one. So this month so far I've read 11 books. Let me go ahead and give y'all the stats. I'll tell y'all right now, this was not a fun reading month for me. So I read a total of 11 books, 7 were fiction, 4 were nonfiction, a total of 2,577 pages and an average of 261 pages per book. 5 books were physical, 5 were audio, and 1 was an ebook. So let's go ahead and get started. I will tell y'all now, I did get into a reading slump this month. Despite the fact that I read 11 books, I got into a reading slump this month because it took me a while to get a 5-star book. When I got it, I thank God. I thank my God in heaven. So the first book I read this month was The School for Good Mothers by Jessamine Chan. I'm gonna actually put this down here because I don't want to keep looking to the side. I think it's not a good look. I gave this book 3 stars. This is a fiction, dystopian, science fiction novel. It is a total of 336 pages and I read it physically. So this book is about our main character. I believe her name is Frida, and she's a divorced woman who has a 2-year-old daughter. And one day she is so like overwhelmed with her daughter, I guess she like runs out the house and she leaves her daughter at home by herself for like 3 hours. And mind you, she's a divorcee, so she has like split custody with her spouse as well. And so someone calls CPS and finds out that her daughter's at home by herself. And so they say that if she wants to get her daughter back, she has to go to this school for good mothers. And it's pretty much like this alternative universe sort of thing where like the mothers have to be there for a whole entire year and they're learning like how to be a good mother. And I thought the premise of this book was like so good. Like this is such an interesting premise, and I get so sad when books have such a good plot and then it's just not executed super well. This book was 336 pages. It felt like it was 500. There's almost a little bit too much detail given when we were spending that year with Frida at the School for Good Mothers. Like it was a little too long. Like I felt like I was there for a year because it was just so detailed. And there were some subplots going on, like subplots of like racism and subplots about how there's also a school for good fathers and like things that are going on there. And I wish that instead of like going so deep into like the school, I wish that like if the school took up 100%, right? Let's say that. If it was 100%, I wish it would have broken off to like 75% and these are other 25% to touch on other smaller plot points. I think it would have just helped it to flow a little bit faster because this book was a bit of a ride. Like it was a little bit slower, but I still genuinely enjoyed this book. I gave it 3 stars. I just felt like it was a little bit slow, but I do think it was impactful. This book, I thought about this book for a long time after because it just made me so upset. Like it honestly did. I felt so sad for the mothers. Like I literally shed a few tears because what Frida did was wrong, but this little school was just insane and it was so unethical. It was so bad. I would still recommend this book even though I gave it 3 stars. I would still recommend it if this sounds interesting to you. I would just say no, that the book does get a little bit slow in the middle, but still a good read, honestly. And I'm glad I started my year off with that book because I don't hear anybody talking about it, and it was still pretty good. The next book is Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. I also gave this 3 stars. This is a nonfiction memoir, a total of 224 pages, and I listened to it on audio. Now, I do rate memoirs, and just as a disclaimer, when I rate memoirs and biographies and things like that, I'm not rating it as in like, oh, this biography wasn't good, this memoir wasn't good. Like, no, I'm not rating their life story. I'm rating like, was it captivating? Did it keep my interest? That's what I'm rating more so, like their writing style. I'm not rating their actual life because no one can rate your life and say what it was like. Also, I always tell you what I'm drinking. I have a smoothie today. Mixed berries, strawberries, banana, and oat milk. It's really bussin'. I haven't had a smoothie in like a year. So this book is about Ashley C. Ford. It's about her life. So she is a black woman. She grew up with her mom and a few siblings. And it's just about her life story growing up in a house with an abusive mother, the different men that were coming in and out of the household, some of whom were quite grimy. I just didn't enjoy this, like, and I hate to say that because it's someone's life, but I didn't like, I feel like essay, I can't say the real word, sexual, you know, I feel like it's a common thing in memoirs and biographies because it's a real thing that happens to women and far more often than it should. And I just think I want to steer away from memoirs that touch on that. That's not why I gave the book 3 stars, like by any means. But I just want to read a slightly different story. I think pretty much everything I've read memoir or biography wise has had that in it, but I think it's just more so like, unfortunately that's a lot of women's experiences, and I just didn't love the way it was written, but still a very like valid experience. The next book, and y'all, this book, oh, I have so much to say because this book put me in a reading slump. The next book is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I gave this book 2 stars. It's a fiction romance book. It's 288 pages and I read this physically. So originally I got to maybe like somewhere between like 30 or 40% into the book and I was like, you know what, I really don't like this book, and I DNF'd it. And everyone has been talking about how this book is so great. It came out last fall and everyone's like, oh no, this book is so good. Like no one dislikes this book. So I was like, you know what, I was getting FOMO. I said, you know what, I'm gonna finish the book. And it was so painful to finish this book, y'all. It was so painful. And after I finished it, I was in a reading slump. I did not read for a week straight, like no audio, no physical, nothing. I was like, I don't want to read books. But I kind of had to force myself back into reading because 1, I do enjoy reading, and 2, I produce a lot of book content, so I gotta be reading books. This book is about our 2 main characters. It's dual POV. Our hero has depression, our heroine has bipolar disorder, and you find that out as we progress throughout the story. That was not my issue with the story. My issue with the story is that it just felt like, let me find my Goodreads review because that's will be able to help me like better summarize my feelings about this book, honestly. So here's my initial review. DNF at 60%. So I gave this book a chance, okay? This book isn't for me. This is my first read by the author and was highly anticipated due to the glowing reviews and synopsis, but I just can't get into it. This book is slow. I'm at the 50% mark and there's still no plot. This is very character driven, which would be fine if I cared about the characters, but I don't. I don't like the writing and how at the beginning there are narrators, but as we progress, all that is thrown out of the window. There are points where the writing feels like a stream of conscious and gets very convoluted and confusing. I don't like that the book lacks normal chapters. I just didn't like this. This book works for a lot of people, but unfortunately not me. Hopefully I have a better luck with the author's other works. So to summarize my summary, this book is just so weird. The way it's written is so weird. Like when you start the book, there's like narrators in the book. And then you get to like maybe 30% and all the narrators are gone. Can someone explain why there are narrators and then there weren't? Like I don't understand that. Did not get that. And then there are parts, like I said, where the writing was like a stream of conscious. As I progressed in the book and I found out that our heroine had bipolar disorder, that made more sense why they wrote her like thought process like that. But it did get confusing, I'm not gonna lie. Also, this book has like a lot of big words, which I don't mind, but it was like, I didn't know what they were talking about at the time. And I'm not stupid, okay? I'm not stupid. But I didn't like the way it was written. It was so wordy. There were so many words on each page, and each word I didn't know. And it was just so bogged down. It was so convoluted. I didn't like it. Here's my updated review. I decided to go back and finish this book because I was getting major FOMO. Ultimately, I'm giving this book 2 stars and stand by my initial feeling that this story simply is not for me. I'm honestly still confused by the writing, especially the narrations at the beginning. This book was a slog and took me forever to finish, even when I only had 10 pages left. True story. I'm glad I finished it because my final thoughts are more positive than my initial, because initially I DNF'd it with 1 star, now it gets 2. And I respect the author's note, however, I could have done without this story. So yeah, this book, Olivia Blake actually has bipolar disorder, so that's why it's like I respect what this book was doing, because this is a book that obviously our author held close to her heart. So I respect the book, but I didn't enjoy it. And that's just my personal thoughts. The next book is This Is Going to Hurt, Diaries of a Junior Doctor by Adam Kay. I gave this book 4 stars. It's a nonfiction memoir, 285 pages, and I listened to this on audio. So this book is about a junior doctor who lives in Britain, and it's just talking about his experience as a doctor on the, I think it's called the maternity ward. Wherever babies are born. I don't know the name, I don't have baby. But the maternity ward, he's a doctor there. And so he's just recounting like different stories about like people giving birth, different things that he's seen like on that ward. It's like so interesting. Like he definitely has a very like dry and kind of dark sense of humor. Like I'll give y'all some examples. So this one lady wanted to eat her placenta. And then he was just like, and she was like, I want to eat my placenta, like, it's so normal in nature, like other animals do it, why shouldn't I do it? He made a little side comment like, well, humans have presidents and humans have governments. Do other animals have governments? Dogs literally eat their throw up. Do we eat our throw up? Like, we can't just be fully comparing ourselves to what other animals do, because we're not other animals. And also, if you believe in eating your placenta, that's fine. I'm just telling you what happened in the book, okay? And so he said that they went and they saved the placenta because she wanted to eat it. And then they were in the process of doing that, and they turn around and she has some bloody thing in her mouth. And they were like, what? And she's like, wait, is this not the placenta? And it was like little random stuff like that, and that's how he would like end that little like portion of the chapter. And so like the humor was like very dry, so it was like really interesting. But the book did end on kind of a sad note. I would not call this a sad book overall, like by any means, because it's more so like these are his real journal entries, and he adds things that were like funny and things like that. But the last journal entry was a little bit sad because it was about a woman who was giving birth, and unfortunately like the baby lived but she didn't. And I don't want to like spoil the book, but a comment that was made by the husband was just like really, it was sad, but the comment made sense. Yeah, so he said that after that incident he actually stopped being a doctor because it was too much for him, like the emotional stress, like he didn't get any sleep. And I guess in Britain doctors don't get paid that much, at least he didn't. Like he wasn't balling like how doctors would be balling, he would not balling. So it was talking about that. It was talking about like different things, like in terms of doctors' compensation, people saying that doctors are in it just for the money, and he was like, no one in their right mind would do a job like this just for the money, where you're literally seeing people live and die every single day. Like no one's doing that for money. You have to really like have a passion for it. And I just appreciate this book. My mom is a nurse, so I always hold like medical people close to my heart, and I really appreciate this book. Like I said, it's kind of like a dry humor. There is one part that's a little bit sad, but I would recommend this if you think it sounds interesting. If you're interested in the medical field at all, or anything that happens like on the maternal ward, I would definitely recommend this one. Well, I've been talking for a minute. I'm only on book like 5. The next book is Extreme Ownership: How U.S. Navy SEALs Would Lead and Win. This is by Joko Willing, Leif Babin, and I DNF'd this at 9%. This is a nonfiction leadership self-help book. It's a total of 320 pages, but I believe I read 29 pages, and I listened to this on audio. So my brother actually recommended this book. He's in the military, and the way he recommended it was funny. I don't know if my brother or my dad is watching this. We're all together, and he was like, you know what? There's this book I want y'all to read about extreme ownership, and it was just funny. I didn't finish this book because I listened to it on audio, and I didn't like the narrator's voice. I believe this is narrated by the authors, and his voice was just not it for me. So I DNF'd this. It's a soft DNF, but personally I don't really read self-development books physically. So if it's on audio and I'm not feeling it, probably won't resume it. The next book is Come For Me With Apples by Catherine M. Valente. This book is for a very specific video, so I'm not going to talk about my star rating. But just know that it's a fiction horror novella. It's 103 pages, and I read it physically. Stay tuned for a reading vlog that has to do with reading and eating, and in that video I will discuss that book more. I read the bonus chapter of Verity. So Verity is by Colleen Hoover. I actually gave this book 4 stars. This is a fiction thriller romance. The bonus chapter was just 40 pages, so I just put in 40 pages into my total page count. So I gave this 4 stars. My final rating for Verity, if you go on Goodreads, is still 5 stars because I thought that Verity was absolutely brilliant. But if the bonus chapter / epilogue would have been the true ending, I would have given this book 4 stars. There's a few reasons for that. One, I don't really like epilogues. If you've read Verity, you know that it ends on a cliffhanger. So I was like, ooh, bonus chapter. They're gonna resolve the cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is not resolved in the bonus chapter. It's just a mess, no cap. It just gets more messy. And so I personally feel like the book was stronger with the cliffhanger ending because it created more room for discussion. Like this would be a very good like book club book because of how it ended. But I think that the bonus chapter kind of took away from how nicely the original ending was, because it doesn't resolve the original ending. And so it's just like, it just wasn't needed in my opinion, honestly. The next book is also for my reading and eating video, so I won't talk about this book in detail at all. But the next book I read was With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a YA contemporary fiction novel. It's a total of 392 pages, and I read it physically. The next book is Mickey's 7. This was actually recommended by another YouTuber. I cannot think of her name right now because I just recently found her channel, but I'll put it on the screen. This book is by Edward Ashton. I gave it 3 stars. It's a fiction sci-fi novel, a total of 304 pages, and listened to it on audio because she recommended listening to it on audio. And I would say that this book on audio is actually very good. So this book is about this like group, I guess kind of like a colony, a group of people, of conglomerates that lives in space. And they're doing different space missions. And so they have this guy named Mickey who pretty much he's an expendable. So the way that his life works is that like they like have his memory in like a jar. I don't really know exactly how to explain it. But they have him go on these missions where like he's most likely gonna die. But because he's an expendable, he gets like to live forever. Like he's immortal. And the way that he's immortal is that they save his memory, and then when he physically dies, they just like create another one of him and put his memory again. He goes on another mission, he dies, puts in his memory, blah, blah, blah. Like that's how it goes. So Mickey 7 is about the 7th iteration of Mickey. And it's interesting because it kind of talks about how like people think he's not a real human, but he is, which you kind of sort of find out more about that in the book. I think that the audio was the best way to consume this because it's like a very fun audiobook. Like, I actually really enjoyed it, and I don't typically read fiction on audio, but I thought it was pretty good on audio. I don't know, it's just I'm not a sci-fi person. This is my first sci-fi I've read, so I just gave it 3 stars. Thought it was fun and enjoyable, but it wasn't anything to write home about. The next book, oh my gosh, and my very first and only 5-star of the month so far. I still have 2 books to read, so I don't want to speak too soon, but Gangland II. This is a series. It's a 3-book series by Leo Sullivan and Portia Sterling. I gave this book 5 stars with room. This book was so good, and it is a fiction urban novel. It is 320 pages, and I read this as an ebook. Y'all, oh my gosh, I can't really talk about this book because it is in a 3-book series, so I'll talk about the very first book instead. So the very first book is about a girl named Star. She lives in Southside Chicago on 63rd. She is a young black woman. She lives with her grandma, her mom, who's a crackhead and who's always in and out stealing money from her grandma, and her younger sister, Ebony. She grows up in the hood, so she has a much harder life, but she's always desired to go to college. Like, she's super duper smart. She wants to go to college, and so she's just trying her best to like stay away from the gang life and go to college and make something of herself. Unfortunately, when she hits 18, she gets tagged in, so she has no choice but to join a gang, which she's never wanted to do. And the gang is called the Gangster Disciples. This is like a real gang in Chicago. And the gang leader, his name is Polo. She starts to date him. And in the second book, it's just kind of going deeper into their relationship, her trying to go to college, her affiliation with the gangs, things with her family. Like, this is so good. If you are a fan of The Coldest Winter Ever, I think this is a book that you would really enjoy. The first book I gave 4 stars only because there was like a lot of like unnecessary foreshadowing in the book. Like, they'll be like, Star didn't know this is gonna be the worst day of her life, but they would end like every chapter like that, and I was like, okay. And some of the stuff you wouldn't see resolved in that book because it was the first book, whereas with this one there was some foreshadowing, but I think maybe only like 2 or 3 times, so it was a lot less. This book was so hard to put down. It was so juicy. It was so good. It was so funny. Like, there were parts of this book where I was laughing out loud, and I was screenshotting like some of the scenes, and I put them on my Instagram story, which if you don't follow me on Instagram, it is _blessedbybella__. That is my book page. And I had like screenshot parts and put it on my story. Everyone was like, what book is that? Like, that looks funny. And like, I literally laughed in this book. I cried. Like, it was just so much. Like, it's so good. And I just think books like this are really powerful for the black community and also just like the POC community and the world at large, because gangs are a real issue, and the amount of people who lose their lives, and even those who don't lose their lives but their lives are turned upside down due to them, it's just 5 stars. Okay, so I have one more book that I've read. If you guys are enjoying this video so far, please don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to this video. And if you like it for real, go ahead and share it with someone who you know would also enjoy this content. So the very last book is Maybe It's You, Cut the Crap, Face Your Fears, Love Your Life by Lauren Handel Zander. I don't know what I'm rating this book. I'm teetering between 2 and 3 stars. This is a nonfiction self-help book. It was 256 pages. I listened to it on audio, and I just actually finished it yesterday, and I have a few notes about this book because so this book is pretty much about taking like extreme ownership over everything in your life, which as a premise I like. So in terms of the context of this book, like I said, it's about extreme ownership, but they're very like so a lot of things that are talked about in this book like over and over again is body image, marriage, having sex with your spouse when you don't want to, singleness, online dating. Those are the main things touched on in this book, I'm not gonna lie. So I was like, And I will say that part of my issue with this book is when I read self-development, I want to know that this is actually factually based, like factually backed up. There is like no psychology, no numbers. I don't know where she's getting this data from. I think it's just like maybe it's from her own experience and people around her, which is fine, but I don't think you can like generalize knowledge that you're trying to teach other people when you have no like factual hard numbers to back it up, in my opinion. And I don't like that form of self-development books. I could not relate to this book. I cannot lie. I could not relate to it. At 30% in, I really could have DNF'd this book and been done with it. Like, I could have DNF'd this book and called it a day, but it was entertaining. Like, she was talking about some messy stuff she did in her life and some messy things with her family, her friends. She's putting everyone's business on blast. And I was like, girl, you're so messy. And so like, despite the fact that I honestly don't think this was an actual good book, I was entertained. Like, but I don't think that was the purpose. I'm gonna give this book 2 stars because I don't think this book achieved what it wanted to achieve. Honestly, I really don't. But I did have fun reading it. Like I said, I could have DNF'd this book at 30% and pretty much gained all the knowledge that she was talking about, but I stuck through because it was entertaining, and I don't regret reading this despite the fact I'm giving this book 2 stars. I don't regret reading it because it was just really funny. Like, it was funny, and I don't think it was supposed to be. So those are the 11 books that I read this month in January so far. Like I said, I'll probably have a little bit of overflow in my next wrap up in February. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with someone who you think would also enjoy this content. Let me know in the comments down below what is your favorite book that you read this month, or if any of these books are on your radar, let me know as well. I'll see you on my next video. Bye.